Welcome to Tossing Grenade the Windmills. Windmills.
Chapter 54, Precyber, by T.C. Ricks and Ken Leitner. They flew across Atlanta in Norn's private helicopter. Clarke had flown this model on simulators plenty of times before, so he decided to risk it. He also knew this model had advanced gyro stabilization software and could practically fly itself. Apparently Norn had programmed in a destination, pulled out a laptop, and worked while en route. Just before they landed, Mary mentioned the corporate security had found Norn's body. Emily looked at Mary. "Is that bad?" Mary shrugged. "It will take them half an hour to an hour to piece together what happened. By then, the mercenaries will have set off the bomb." They landed the helicopter on the rooftop about 2 blocks from the park. Corporate security surrounded the entire park, trying to direct the huge crowds. Drama was the event of the year, and the season finale in Atlanta was the media local event of the decade. That was why her son had wanted to go, and why she had let him. She regretted her decision now. She had tried calling her son and the babysitter at least half a dozen times with no results. Clearly, she had a lot of choices to make in the future about her parenting. She had no one to blame but herself. Mary got them in the back way with her Aqua credentials. It helped them to be able to keep their guns, which was nice. The guard gave them each a VIP visitor pass. Clarke looked at Mary with concern. The more time went on, the more unhinged she looked. No, that wasn't right. The more determined she looked. But she was so determined that anything and anyone that got in her way was pretty much assets or liabilities for the sole purpose of protecting her child. He still felt that such overwhelming indifference to human life at the expense of her own children was somehow wrong. Clarke said, "Okay, we know they're here. They deliberately didn't tell Norn where they were detonating the bomb, but we know that they want to make it as messy as possible." Mary thought a moment. "If the point was to get it on the cameras, then it's going to have to be under or near the main stage." They moved through the crowd. It was agonizingly slow. They tried talking back and forth, but none of them could hear each other. Someone spotted the drama contestants, and suddenly Clarke was shifted away from Mary and Elizabeth. He could still see them, but from time to time, in the throng of bodies, he was certainly not going to be able to get near them or hear a damn thing they said. Great. On top of everything else, Clarke was now alone. He had to think like the mercenaries. Where would they set the bomb? Under the stage was dangerous but obvious. Security would check there periodically. Just because there had not been an attack in years didn't mean the old lessons were not remembered. But where then? He took a long, hard look around the park. At first, he saw nothing. Then he forced himself to reduce the hysteria. Not an easy thing to do, and really look around him. The event was basically just a large crowd around the stage. There was a large ramp and elevated walkway up the side that could allow the drama finalists to walk up through the crowd without causing any problems. He saw a few people on the distant rooftops. Snipers, maybe? He saw a large wooden block that represented Noir Television, one of the subsidiaries of Aqua Noir. He saw a large refrigerated truck in the distance, and with the trailers where the finalists were probably waiting. He had noticed that there were some construction work being done across the way. There were bulldozers and a large crane. Suddenly he had it. Clarke did not follow drama very closely himself, but he remembered from the ubiquitous commercials that there was going to be a surprise in the middle of the finale. If they had arranged to move some big elaborate piece of set, they would need the crane to do it. The terrorists could simply hijack the crane and pick up something else besides the main set piece. He looked around for Emily and Mary. He thought he saw them, but it looked like Mary had grabbed her son and was heading out. Emily was shouting at her. Neither of them saw him. He did not have time to get them. It was now or never, and he was alone. Mary was relieved. She had found Timmy, and that was all that mattered to her. She took his hand immediately and began to drag him from the area. Timmy was indignant. "Mom! What?" The babysitter blanched. "Mrs. Heath, what's wrong?" Mary turned on a 180-degree pivot. "You're fired." The force of her words, the anger behind them, shocked Timmy and the babysitter. Timmy looked to be on the verge of tears, and so did the babysitter. Several other people looked indignant. They obviously thought she was a terrible mother. Well, who cared what they thought if her child's safety was at stake? Look, I don't have time for this. Timmy, we're leaving right now. Almost reluctantly, as an afterthought, she looked at Erla and said, you should come too. Timmy dug in his heels. Why? I don't want to go! She almost slapped him. Almost. But it was the one thing that she had been taught that separated parents from monsters. Parents did not hit their children. Ever. She was a good mother. She looked down and stared into Timmy's eyes. Timmy, we need to go now. Right now. She did not yell. She did not shout. But the tone of her voice indicated that there would be serious consequences if he ignored her. Timmy gulped, and they left. She saw Emily staring at her from the crowd with contempt for only a moment, and then she saw Emily chase after Clarke. Mary didn't care. She could live with a stranger's contempt if it meant saving her child. Belatedly, Erla followed behind. She would come back and help once she saw that Timmy and Erla were off sight. Clarke swam against the flow of the human mob heading towards the stage across the street. The construction site had an unusually high fence with wood around it, which Clarke doubted he could climb. He scanned left and right, trying to find an opening. He spotted a door and ran to it. The door, he found, had a hasp and cheap combination lock. Horace had showed him how simple these were to defeat. He looked around a bit and spotted just what he needed. He picked up a large rock and then smacked the lock with it. The lock popped apart. He removed it and cracked open the gate. Unfortunately, the crowd around him immediately noticed. Nearby, Clarke heard someone shout, "Look, in there! It's the drama finale!" The crowd surged around him and pushed him through the gate. He stumbled and started to run towards the crane. What had seemed like a construction site from across the street looked more like a Hollywood set from within the fencing. The crane did have a set piece hanging from it, and the area around it was filled with mobile buildings that Clarke imagined the cast used for dressing rooms. There was a lot more security in here as well. However, any cover he might have had was lost. As Clarke ran forward, he saw everyone reacting to the crowd breaching the fence. Security guards ran forward with hands extended, shouting, "Stop!" at the top of their lungs. Crowd members started to shy back towards the cover of the buildings. A few doors on the mobile buildings slammed shut. Even the two orange vest-clad crane operators stood up to check out what was happening. Clarke tried to see if the crane operators where the two men had met on the ship from Columbia. However, by the time some of the crowd had surged past him, his view was not clear. He ran as fast as he could, but the few tourists in front of him were trying just as hard to avoid the security guards headed their way. Clarke barely heard the shots over the shouting. He would not have registered them at all, except that the man directly in front of him suddenly fell over, grasping at his stomach and shouting in pain. Clarke ducked down on the ground, and the crowd behind him, who had still not grasped the situation, flowed past. Clarke heard more shots, and then two more distant shots in answer. By this time, everyone had figured it out, and the crowd started surging back again. Once he could see the crane again, Clarke noticed two slumped bodies where the operators had previously stood. The first gunshot victim, the one in front of him, had gone silent in a wide puddle of blood. Two more people lay on the ground moaning. One apparently shot in the leg and another holding his arm. Clarke walked forward as the security guards ran up to the victims. One shouted at Clarke, "Please get back behind the fence, sir." Clarke flashed his VIP badge and then walked past the guard to the crane. He barely noticed the guard checking the silent body next to him for a moment and then moved on to the next victim. Dead, thought Clarke. Another one dead. He continued on towards the crane, and more guards converged on him as he approached. Then they saw his badge and asked, "Do you need to be here, sir? If not, please return to the trailer and let us take care of this." Clarke got close enough and recognized the terrorists at last. This was it. This was the plan. Clarke assumed his most official voice and said, "I'm not talent. I'm contract security, just like you. Search the set. We have reason to believe these men were terrorists attempting to set off a bomb." One of the guards got his PCA and started talking. Another took out his PCA to take notes. A few others headed towards the set. The note-taker approached and asked, "Could I have your name, please?" Clarke handed him the VIP badge. The guard ran the handwritten text off of it. John Doe, guest of Mary Heath. Well, I recognize Mary Heath. I guess John isn't your real name, though. Of course it is, Clarke said with his most fake, innocent smile. The guard chuckled, made a quick note, and started to call someone. Clarke wanted to leave very badly. He did not want to be around long enough for anyone to figure out who he was or what Mary had just done. But he did not want to leave until he knew that the bomb had been found. He decided to walk over towards the set, and as he did, he saw a couple of guards running out, shouting, "Get bomb disposal over his stat! We found it!" Clarke turned around and walked back towards the gate. He took a couple of steps and decided to jog. Right now, people would expect him to move with a purpose, and so he did. Hopefully, no one would notice his real purpose was to just get away. As he saw Mary on the way out, she waved him off, so he kept moving. He cleared the gate and headed for the subway. Much to his surprise, Emily appeared behind him. She said, "So mission accomplished?" "I guess so. At least as much as we could hope to accomplish. The terrorists are dead and they found the bomb." Emily smiled and caught up with Clarke as she said, "I couldn't get inside the fence, so I waited outside for you. There were N-pigs everywhere. We should head back to our place." As military and police helicopters roared overhead, Clarke and Emily quietly made their way down the subway and out of sight.
This has been the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. I'm Thomas Ricks. Music by Melanie Ricks. Voices by Skip Huffman and Josie Bergen-Lawson. Copyright 2012.
Kenneth Leitner
And Red Anvil Amalgamated.
To fight the forces of evil!